The Indian economy could become the third biggest in the world by the end of this financial year, overtaking Germany and closing the gap on China and USA. Multiple reports claim Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman expects Bharat to secure the top 3 spot this year itself, despite Donald Trump's tariffs on India. But now comes another huge shocker. A massive $100 billion investment in India and a major trade deal with EFTA countries comes into effect on the 1st of October, which promises to wipe out any impact of US trade restrictions on India. Now, firstly, India is not paying any tariffs. All the tariffs are being paid by US customers. Still, the 50% Trump tariffs and weaponization of trade by Washington has taken a toll on India-US ties. Despite Donald Trump's trade havoc, India's economy is soaring and touching new heights by expanding by 7.8% in April to June quarter of FY26, beating all projections and showcasing investor confidence in India's rise under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Still, with US tariffs on certain Indian exports and sectors, India has started looking at alternative markets and investment partners and opportunities. The Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, or the TEPA, between India and the European Free Trade Agreement Association, or EFTA countries, which includes Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland, comes into force on the 1st of October 2025. Now, this trade deal took 16 long years to negotiate and finalize after talks began way back in 2008. So maybe President Trump should have a little patience and give India and US authorities more time to iron out a mutually beneficial trade deal. The TEPA with European countries comes at a great time for India. The agreement will prove beneficial as it is aimed to enhance trade access in goods and services, attract assured investment tied to job creation, and opens up channels for professional mobility and technology collaboration. Now, in 2024, India had signed this free trade agreement with a group of 4 European countries, like we mentioned, Switzerland, Iceland, Norway and Liechtenstein, that are not members of the European Union. However, these 4 countries work with the EU through their own economic arrangements. The FTA will make it easier now for Indian and EFTA businesses to expand their operations in each other's respective markets. Now, India is the world's biggest consumer market of 1.4 billion people, and EFTA countries provide a high-value market for Indian manufacturers and exporters. Now, this bloc, the European Free Trade Association, or EFTA, is India's 5th largest trading partner, and their trade in 2024-25 was valued at approximately $24.4 billion. There is a small concern, however, because India exported just under $2 billion worth of goods, while imports from the EFTA nations reached $22.4 billion. But with the FTA now in place and coming into effect from the 1st of October, it should make it now easier for Indian businesses to find new markets. Taking economic relations to the next level, these countries have committed to invest $50 billion in India within the next 10 years and then another $50 billion in the 5 years after that. India will now permit the import of several products at concessional duties and can withdraw tariff concessions if investment targets are not met. Switzerland revealed, quote, "It also improves market access to the Indian market for Swiss goods and services. India grants Switzerland improved market access for 94.7% of existing exports," unquote. But it's not just the EFTA nations. After signing a free trade agreement with the United Kingdom earlier this year, India's FTA with the European Union is also on the cards. After a gap of 8 years, the 13th round of talks for the proposed free trade agreement between India and the European Union started on the 8th of September. The talks are aimed to conclude the India-EU FTA by the end of this year amid Trump's tariff pressure. European Commissioner for Trade Marcos Stefkovic is scheduled to visit India on the 12th of September to take stock of the progress of the negotiations with Union Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal. Now remember, India is European Union's third largest trade partner with a share of 10.9%. A trade agreement with the European Union will imply a collaboration that can be of India's benefit in the long run as India emerges a global economic powerhouse. India is currently looking for new economic partners amid turbulence created by tariff policies of the current US administration. The European Union and India already share lucrative trade relations. Europe sees India as a massive market for European goods and services, highly protected yet experiencing growth at a rate of 6 to 7% per year, which is the fastest in global top 50. In 2023, the European Union overtook the United States to become India's largest trading partner for the year, with a total trade volume of $132 billion compared to $128 billion between India and the United States. In FY 24-25, India's bilateral trade in goods with the European Union stood at $136.5 billion, with exports worth $75.8 billion and imports at $60.6 billion. Moreover, the European Union market accounts for about 17% of India's total exports, while the EU's exports to India make up 9% of its total overseas shipments. While maintaining its core strategic interests, the Indian government has signaled its willingness to explore alternative partnerships. On the 8th of September, India and Israel also moved towards signing a possible free trade agreement after they sealed a bilateral investment treaty. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and her Israeli counterpart Bezalel Smotrich formalized the BIT. Israel's finance minister added, Israel is the first OECD, or Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, member state with which India has signed this strategic agreement in accordance with India's new models for investment treaties, unquote. Further strengthening the economic cooperation, this treaty is designed to safeguard investors from both countries, offering protection in line with global precedents and practices. Despite Trump's tariff tactics, as of 2025, India has 13 active free trade agreements and several ongoing negotiations aimed at strengthening bilateral and regional trade partnerships. India has signed and implemented more than a dozen FTAs with key partners including Japan, Singapore, South Korea, the United Arab Emirates, and even Australia. The proof lies in increase in preferential certificates of origin issued. Indian exporters significantly leveraged free trade agreements in FY 24-25. Meanwhile, trade talks continue with the United States in the background, even as India expands its economic engagements with other partner nations. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal confirmed last week that India and the United States are currently negotiating a trade deal that could be finalized by November this year. However, he further acknowledged that a little bit of geopolitical issues have overtaken the trade discussions. While addressing the annual Global Investor Conference 2025 in Mumbai, the minister added, I do hope that things will get back on track soon and we will conclude a bilateral trade agreement by the fall or November or so, as was discussed by our two leaders in February, unquote. Another report suggested that New Delhi and Washington are currently maintaining active communication channels to address the current tariff disagreements. On the other hand, the United States administration continues with its jabs and harsh remarks against India. Peter Navarro, US President Donald Trump's senior trade advisor, published yet another anti-India post on social media. Navarro in that post accused India of profiteering from Russian oil imports. However, Platform X's fact-checking note corrected Navarro, saying India's Russian oil purchases are for energy security and they do not violate any sanctions or international law. Navarro was clearly embarrassed, calling the fact-checking note a crap note. The Trump aide responded to fact checks and slammed Elon Musk for letting propaganda in people's posts. But while Navarro may be in denial, the fact is that no one is buying the US narrative on India, especially when the United States and the European Union themselves are trading with Russia in far more quantity compared to India. But what do you believe, India or the United States? Who will win this trade war? Leave a comment with your opinion, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News.